Alright, hello again everyone, fellow flat earthers and fellow truthers and visitors. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day. If you live on the other side of the circle of the earth from where I do, well, I hope you're having a wonderful evening. And God bless us all. I will be as brief and to the point and as clear as I can make our arguments so that other truthers are aware of these arguments. I hope you bear with me to make it to the end and try to just power through and absorb some of this. And then, of course, don't believe me. You know the drill. Go look the stuff up for yourself. Make sure I'm not totally full of it. Make sure I didn't Photoshop and create all these websites or whatever. You guys know the deal. Alright? But I just want everybody to see these points that I do see people arguing. I myself and other people I know have argued these points, and I see a couple of guys on YouTube now that have proffered videos about this stuff. You know, fake spaceman in space. Used to be fake clouds in the sky. I mean, he had a video out a long time ago about it. Props to you, bro, and anybody that's been nipping away at the truth. And there's lots of people nipping it away at the truth, but there's only a handful of people I see discussing these argument points. And some of these are mine and my friends' points that I haven't seen anybody arguing on YouTube, just on other websites. So here we go. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, but it's a lot to cover. There are several points, and I'll try to keep it as clear and to the point and plain Jane as I can. Here we go. This website is not important. This is just the story that was given to everyone, the general public, by NASA about one of the Apollo missions. And I only started off the video with this story so that I can show you the speed needed to overcome Earth's gravity. 24,500 miles per hour was achieved. Okay? To have translunar injection. Alright, you gotta love all their anatomical words they use for space travel, injection, and 30-second burn, and penetration, and abort mission. Anyway, I'm sure it just makes them feel like they're doctors. Anyway, so here we go, Rocketdyne, F1. Now, you should know that I'm a Ford guy, and being a Ford guy that's not rich, I have had to do all my repairs myself, which means I have spent the majority of my life since I was 16 years old taking engines out of cars, disassembling them completely, rebuilding them, transmission swaps. I have eaten more grease than one of my kids weighs probably. Just on the hamburger buns and pizza crust that I've eaten over my lifetime. Working on cars when it was too inconvenient to go anywhere to try to wash our hands. Okay? So, all these kids who love rocketry and love the idea of traveling space and that there's satellites and all this stuff and that we're going to travel other worlds someday, they're going to be quick to go hop on any rocket fan website, any rocketry enthusiast website, and copy and paste the same info that myself and others have already read, and with our collective experience totaling tens of thousands of hours of engine building, rebuilding, repairing, disassembling, assembling, and just general understanding of how engines work, we disagree. And we disagree for technical reasons, not because we dislike NASA. We disagree because the numbers don't add up. So here we go, the F1 engine. Dreamed up and perfected by a Nazi. Turned American. Albeit for a massive salary and huge fame. Let's get to the brass tacks of the deal here. Now, you just read their fish story that they achieved 24,500 miles per hour. Well, here's the specs of the engine. And, you know, the typical U.S. citizen who would want to debunk a truther might have just enough gumption to come on a website like this, and you might scroll down to here and be like, whew, these numbers. Yeah, they definitely must have achieved them, man. Some big old numbers there. Looks fast. Well, looks fast, that's true. But the first thing we need to refute about rocketry is that a rocket, and they believe this. This is a belief, I say. I did not misspeak there. I do mean belief when I say that. The belief they have is that a rocket engine will continue to accelerate as long as it's continuing to be fed fuel. Not more fuel, the same amount, but just continuing to be fed fuel forever. If it were to be continually fed fuel forever, that it would continue accelerating forever. Now, that does not say maintain its speed. Every website, this website doesn't matter, okay? Every website will tell you the same thing, that the engine will keep on accelerating forever, or until it expires its fuel. Now, that part is true. If the amount of fuel is less, or is going to run out, in a quicker amount of time, then it can reach its top speed. And I'm going to tell you what that is right now. The other thing about rocketry that is not true, first of all, this is not true. A rocket engine, no engine, will continue to accelerate merely because it has an infinite amount of fuel. Now, that's preposterous. There's no engine on the face of the earth that operates that way. It doesn't matter that NASA has this cool, neat engine, and that it's their NASA technology. It doesn't matter. It's an engine, all right? And every engine has a peak performance capability, and that's all. Otherwise, any level above that would be the actual peak. So whatever the peak is, that's its maximum. Now, they want you to believe it'll continue to accelerate forever, or until it expires its fuel. And so, it will expire its fuel, and it will continue to accelerate until it hits its absolute top speed that it cannot breach. What is that speed? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Oh, but my point was, if this were true, okay, then you go to the drag strip, and every drag racer would show up with the largest tanker they could afford full of fuel. Why? Because going on this logic, well, their car, whoever ends up having the fastest car of the day, will be whoever shows up with the most fuel. Okay, and that's nonsense. Everybody knows that. The fastest car at the track could have just enough to get down the track. So, you want to know how fast a rocket goes for real? What's Apollo's top speed? What was it in the 60s? Well, they tell you right here in your face. Remember, they always like to tell you one way or another. So they don't mind telling you in this manner, where the average citizen would look at this and go, yeah, okay, it looks fast. I guess I believe the numbers, because after all, look at that. I mean, whew, it's a huge number. It's got to go 24,000, I suppose. Well, turns out, nonsense. It's an engine. It has a peak output. And I'm going to tell you how to get to that. Specific impulse. Okay? When you find this on the specs of a rocket engine, all of them will have this. Now, we're only talking about, in this video, or in general, ever, about NASA, we're only going to be talking about rockets that carry their own oxygen. Okay? So, all rockets will have a specific impulse. Get a visual on that number. Then, you can remove this term from your mind. Keep the number, remove the term, and replace this term with effective exhaust velocity, effective exhaust velocity, will be this number. Okay, the specific impulse and the effective exhaust velocity will always equal the same number. Okay, so you can just replace that with that term when you find it about a rocket engine. Top speed of the Apollo vessel would ever achieve would be less than 6,000 miles per hour. Okay, right there it is. Now, the reason I say that's the peak speed it will ever go, and all of the people who understand this agree, is because, like I said, this is the peak output of the engine. And they could say, now, of course, if you ever get them to finally concede this, see, you got to understand, rocket enthusiasts are well aware of this. This is their thorn in their side. That they don't, this is like the reality they refuse to face. But they're aware of it, okay? But remember, this number craps on their whole parade, their whole concept of travel in space and satellites, and that NASA is telling them the truth, and all those things hinge on whether or not they ignore the fact that they know this is the peak directional speed offered from the engine ever at one moment in time. So it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 engines on the same vessel. This is the top speed of action ever in one direction to create reaction in the other direction. Now that's another thing they tell you that we disagree with, is that their rockets operate merely on action-reaction alone. That's not true. I'll explain that later. Well, let's stick with the point here so I can hit it home so you can really understand this enough to go look into it for yourself and argue it amongst others. This is an engine's top speed when it comes to a rocket engine. This is its top speed it can offer out of its engine at any one moment in time, okay, in speed. And in this case, the engines of the Apollo can only offer less than 6,000 miles per hour in one direction to create reaction in the other, if you want to believe their model, or you're going to believe their model in this case. Okay? We're going to go by that. And so the top speed is less than 6,000, and they can say at this point, if they admit that finally, so they're well aware of it, like I said, but that's their thorn in their side. They don't want to admit, and they don't want you to know about it, because then you would be arguing it. Okay? So if you get them to concede this, all right, then you finally have knocked out that a rocket engine could accelerate forever. Nonsense. Once you get that knocked out, get them to admit eventually that this is the peak direction of speed offered by the engine to create reaction. This is the action. Now, unless you believe in free energy 4 times over, okay, no action in one direction is going to create a reaction 4 times greater in the other. That is ridiculous to believe. Okay? Nobody would believe that. Alright, if you went to the drag strip and some kid said, check out my 200 horsepower car, and you're like, okay, cool. And he was like, yeah, it does 9,000 miles per hour. Would you believe him? Of course not. Okay, because you know dang good and well 200 horsepower isn't going to make 9,000 miles per hour. Okay, well that's how ridiculous this is. You got to be kidding me. So, this is the peak speed for Apollo, period, dot. It will never achieve that speed, by the way, because this number is before outside losses are factored in, like hitting low pressure zones as it climbs, or atmospheric drag, or any of those things are not even calculated into this, so it's going to be even less than this number. Alright, remember, everything for a rocket is loss, loss, loss. Everything always makes it go slower and slower, slows it down, hinders it. Nothing makes a rocket go faster than this. This determines its speed. So, we've knocked out the first 2 points. I hope that I made them clear and didn't repeat myself too much. Just trying to bury it so that you can really get a grasp of that. Now, they're going to say, yeah, but we use more than one engine. Okay, well, like I explained a minute ago, which I will fully explain now, it wouldn't matter. We're going to take the burn time and we're going to reduce it down to 15 seconds so that the vessel and its fuel amount can stay the same, okay, thus not getting any heavier. Then we're going to increase the amount of engines from 1 to 10. Alright, so now that 150 second burn time is going to be decreased to 15 seconds, and we're going to have 10 engines on the same vessel. Okay? But we didn't add 10 times the fuel, and we didn't add 10 times the size of the vessel to carry the fuel. We're going to share the amount of fuel it already had for one engine with all 10. Will it matter? No. And like I said, we haven't even increased the size of the vessel. Alright? All we did was add 9 more engines total and share the same amount of fuel and weight of the vehicle. And keep in mind, the weight of the vehicle would still go up because of the weight of the extra 9 engines. So that's the thing is, with rockets, the more you add, the less you get out of it. It doesn't. You can't just keep building an infinitely bigger rocket and get infinitely better and better and better results. You hit a diminishing gain area, which is the same as like I was talking about with everything else, where it takes $5,000 just to get another 1/10 of a second off of your 8-second quarter-mile car. So the amount of engines you add will not do anything except create a higher torque, which will, if you will, which will essentially allow the vessel to go from rest, from 0 to the top speed beneath this number that it's ever possibly able to achieve. It will do that in a much quicker manner. Alright, it will get from 0 to its top speed much quicker, just like increasing torque on a drag racing car without changing the rotational max rotating speed of the engine, without changing the gearing by way of changing the transmission gearing or the rear end differential or the tire diameter. Alright, if you leave all those things the same and you just somehow increase the torque by way of supercharging at low RPM or whatever, all you're going to do is get the vehicle up to its top speed quicker. But since you haven't changed the gearing or anything else, the horsepower hasn't increased, then your top speed is not going to increase. And that's the same thing here. You could add 1,000 engines to the same vessel, all of them, but we're going to stick with the 10. By having 10 engines that all still only put out this amount of speed in one direction, all you're doing is creating a larger cross-sectional area underneath the vessel with more zones that offer that direction in action to create a reaction in the other. But they're just zones under a larger cross-sectional area at the bottom of the vessel. Doesn't mean that this number ever increases. This number will never increase, regardless if you used 100,000 engines on the vessel. Okay? So that's the reason why multiple engines will not ever allow it to achieve more than this speed. So now here we are. An infinite amount of fuel doesn't get it past this number. An infinite amount of engines don't get it past this number. Well, what's left? Well, the only thing left is multiple stages. Okay? And so we'll go ahead and go to that now. And a good thing about this also is that this will allow me to show a more modern launch vehicle, in case anybody thought that I was trying to pull a fast one on them by using only 60s technology. This is the Atlas V. Alright, and go down here to its specs, and here's its engines. Now, try to find an engine making 24,000 miles an hour anywhere. It's not going to happen. 6,000, 6,800 or so, 6,800 or so. And then it climbs. And I'll explain that in a minute. That gets up to whatever that is, 9,800 or so. But it has to, okay? That's not a good thing for them. This is a bad thing. They're having to increase the effective exhaust velocity at a way higher altitude because the air becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. Okay, so it becomes more compliant, if you will. It moves out of the way easier, for a better explanation for you to grasp. And so it absolutely must have a higher number the higher in altitude it goes. But you notice at lower altitudes, it only needs 2/3 of that much effort, alright, to get up to its theoretical 6,000 miles per hour. Alright, and then it needs, for a large portion of the air, once it hits a certain area, it needs a slightly higher amount of effective exhaust velocity just to maintain the speed that it was already given from this guy. But now you'll notice once it hits a certain part of the air, once it gets a certain height above sea level, all of a sudden it becomes exponentially harder to maintain your speed, much less climb in speed. That would be silly to be able to do when you can't even, at an exponential rate, can't even maintain your original speed. So now you have to, look, just in this one little layer, if there was another stage beyond this one, higher above sea level than this one, it would be an even higher number. Why? Because it would have to be, okay, just to maintain the same work. Now, the only way you could ever derive over 24,000 miles an hour from any of these vessels is if you were to come on here as a person that's not that interested, but just wants to debunk a truther so you can put yourself at ease and go to bed. You might come on one of these sites and see these numbers don't add up, and you're like, man, where the hell are they getting this 24,000 mile an hour fish story that they're telling everyone? Because the truthers, I want to discredit them, but I mean, I got to find somewhere where this 24,000 miles an hour could be. Otherwise, they might be right. And so he may find that this is the only thing in blue on the left in the subject area of the engines and see, oh, well, maybe that's its exhaust, and maybe I could figure out its speed. And when he finds out that, if he has enough gumption to look that up, and finds out that it's 6,000 miles an hour, not 24,000, he's going to go, crap, what do I do to get to that number so I can go to bed with a smile on my face? Eventually, he may become desperate and just add all of these speeds in series. After all, they're all here for you to add together. And wouldn't you know, if you add all four of those together, it does, by coincidence, I'm sure, it just happens to favor NASA that it does, total like 29,000 or something miles an hour, with a nice 4,000 or 5,000 mile an hour headroom there, you know, above 24,000. And so that immediately would just put their mind at ease. They'd be like, ah, here we go, that was my problem, I just needed to add all the stages in series. Well, if that were true, and you could actually do that, then you could take two race cars, each capable of 200 miles per hour. You could put one in front of the other. You could push both cars up to 200 miles per hour with the rear car. Then the front car could, like NASA's logic, shed the weight of the rear car, even though the rear car was what was doing all the work. Alright, it can shed that weight. Okay, good for it. But now it's on its own power. And if its own power is dictated by, which is dictated by its own top speed, is only 200 miles per hour, all that car is going to do is maintain. It's 200 miles per hour. It was given for free from the other car. Now, NASA logic, see, the thing is, they don't care what you believe or how you believe their rockets achieve 24,000 miles per hour, as long as you do believe their rockets achieve 24,000 miles per hour. Okay? So, this is here, and it works out great for you to just add them in series and achieve a number that will satisfy that. But the problem is, like I said, the 200 mile an hour car is not going to get to keep the 200 miles per hour it was given by the rear car. And then because it goes 200 miles an hour top speed, add the additional 200 miles per hour it can go on top of that for a total of 400 miles per hour. That's impossible. And nothing on Earth is demonstrable to do so. And so that shoots down that multiple stages will take any of their rockets over even 7,000 miles per hour. Alright? And before I go, I will do another vid specifically geared toward arguing out the points of why rocketry does not work in the void. But for now, I just wanted to cover the speeds that they claim they're capable of, which they are not. Another thing I want to point out real quick, just for fun. This is a fun thing now. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. And haven't you ever thought it was funny that when a rocket from the Uber establishments blasts off from the ground, that it takes off at bicycle speed? Right? Literally, if you could ride a bicycle vertical, or if this was laying horizontal, a bicycler could outrun this thing to right about where it is right here. And at this point, they would probably be tied up and it could start passing the bicycler. But I mean, have you ever seen a rocket other than one of these big ones from an establishment take off at granny pace? All right, you go to any amateur rocket show and watch amateur rockets take off, and in 3 seconds, bam, they're like at the cloud level, and in 2 more seconds and they're totally out of view. Alright, but eventually they'll just come right back to Earth. See, once they run out of fuel, run out of air to push against. Well, same thing here. But these, they take off so slow, it's hilarious that they take off as slow as they do. And of course people say, oh, well, they're huge and heavy and whatever, but so what? It's a rocket. It's supposed to take off. It's supposed to behave just like any other rocket. It's funny that they don't. Now, my other point that I wanted to make, which is not as, I mean, maybe that wasn't as funny as it seemed like it was to me. But here's a thing, a food for thought for people. Here's some food for thought. Haven't you ever wondered why all through the 70s and 80s you weren't going to rocket demonstration shows and cheering on Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong as they twirl over the crowd, doing a McTwist sideways, gangster lean style in some fully maneuverable rocket vessel, like they used effortlessly all over the place? Haven't you ever wondered why you weren't in the crowd at the Bonneville Salt Flats watching them do rocket demonstrations of docking at 24,000 miles per hour over your head, where you could clock them with your own radar gun and verify their speeds, while at the same time making slow motion, millimeter at a time maneuvers slowly toward each other to dock? Haven't you ever wondered why you never got to go watch demonstrations like that? I mean, come on now, think for a second. Mankind has mastered practically everything we have ever put our hands on. I mean, we have air shows for jets and airplanes. We have the circus, you know, where we show off our mastery and control of animals and other people and their crazy abilities, or people's bodies and have such mastery over their bodies and control over their bodies. We have freaking killer whales do what we want them to do. Okay? We have shows demonstrating we can make dolphins do what we want. And stunt shows and bicycle shows. I mean, we have literally demonstration shows for everything. Okay? But we don't for this. Why? Because they don't maneuver like you think they can in every direction in slow motion while flying along at 24,000 miles an hour. They don't even do that kind of speed. Alright, it's not real. That's why you've never been to a show like that. And that's why all the astronauts, when they came back from the first landing on the moon, looked like they were under indictment and not on top of the world. Why don't you go watch the interview and look at their cheery faces and how they can't even get their testimony straight among each other. You would have thought they'd have at least figured out, okay, can we see stars or could we not see stars? I mean, super basic question. They didn't even think to ask that, get that story amongst each other straight before they went out and faced the world. I mean, come on now. So, that's my point of this video. The speeds NASA claims and all these other Uber organizations claim is false. And like I said, all truthers say, don't believe me, go look stuff up for yourself. You guys know the drill. I'm the same way. I wouldn't expect anything different from anyone. And if you run across info that conflicts, hit me up. We'll chat about it, we'll figure it out, we'll hammer away at it. But I'm telling you now, you're not getting 24,000 miles an hour out of anything man-made. I don't care what it is. If it's a physical machine, it's not going 24,000 miles an hour. You can hang your hat on that. So, to all of you who have been pushing the truth, thank you and God bless you for it. Because if we don't, who's ever going to proffer the ideas for anybody to ever go look up? So even if you think something's suspicious, make a video of it. Let other people put eyes on it and put more minds on it. You know, you never know. It might be something you dismiss that is the cornerstone of a new argument against them. So, God bless you all. I hope you all have a great day or evening. And I will get a different video out about our argument points about why rocketry does not work in the void. But for now, look these over and argue them out, and take care, everyone.